r/askreddit. What golden nugget of information do you have to share? A scorpion can hold its breath for 6 days, so don't think drowning it will help you out of your scorpion problem. Even if you aren't willing to give mouth-to-mouth on an unconscious person, chest compressions alone greatly increase their odds of survival. If bees were paid minimum wage, a jar of honey would cost about $200,000. Semen washes off best with cool water. Using hot water can cause the proteins to denature and makes it stickier. By the way, this also applies to period blood, murder blood, urine, and most alcoholic drinks. Hot water will make it harder to remove. From a garment to be labeled "Made in the USA", the proceeds only needs to be started and finished in America. In the case of a certain ladies' underwear line, the material is cut in the USA, shipped overseas for assembly, then shipped back to America where a seamstress sews a "Made in USA" tag on the item. Source: I was an underwear factory worker. A moose can run 40 miles per hour through 6-foot deep snow. The first president of Zimbabwe was President Banana. When choking on food and can't get help, you can get into a push-up position and then just drop down. The ground hitting your stomach and chest will cause what you're choking on to dislodge. I had a heart transplant 5 years ago. When your heart is replaced, the surgeon has to cut the main nerve that gets the signal from the brain to beat and increase the intensity of the beat. Without this nerve, your new heart has no regulation and pumps blood out of habit. You no longer have a fight or flight response, and your new heart beats at 90 plus beats per minute. Speaking of golden nuggets of information to share, goldfish lose their color if they are kept in dim light or are placed in a body of running water, such as a stream. There are about 60,000 characters in the Mandarin language. A very literate person will know 20,000. The average person, from 5 to 10,000. If uneducated, around 3,000. If you know around 6,000 characters, it's enough to read the newspaper. The main reason we stop doing something we love is because we forget our love of doing it for enjoyment's sake and replace it with a desire to be good at it. Horses have a massive blind spot on the front and back of their body. If you are ever around a tame horse, keep a hand on their body while walking around them. This lets it know where you are at all times and decreases the chances of kicking out of shock or fear. This also prevents them from kicking you with as much force. You need to stay very close to them for the full benefit. This is similar to goats, as they instinctively fight things coming head-on and should always be approached from the sides. Also, ears are the gateway to a horse's feelings. Pinned back ears indicate an anxious or angered horse. Pinned straight up indicates curiosity and focus. Each one of the Yamato-class battleship's main gun turrets weighed over 3,000 tons, heavier than the average US destroyer. If you were on a destroyer in the US Navy during World War II, you ran the risk of having to fight a ship whose primary weapons alone displaced more weight than your entire vessel. The Earth wobbles really slowly like a spinning top. It takes about 26,000 years to come full circle. In the process, the Northern Star changes. This is called precession. If you see a job you really want but aren't quite qualified to apply, don't tell yourself no. Make them tell you no. You might be pleasantly surprised. Both my son and daughter followed this advice and got a job that turned into a career. The gray rock treatment is an incredibly useful method of dealing with narcissists and toxic people. If such a person is going at you verbally or behaviorally, screaming or posturing or trying to fight, become like a gray rock in a river. No reaction. Don't answer. No movement. Just sit calmly and let the stream of crazy flow past you. Bonus points if you can stare blankly. When people thrive on causing a reaction, they absolutely cannot compute when they get no reaction. If you're in physical danger, obviously react to keep yourself safe, but don't argue, explain, or defend verbally. You'll never change a narcissist's mind. It's just walking on a treadmill. People often underestimate how big a billion actually is. An easy way to conceptualize it is to think in terms of seconds. 1 million seconds ago was 12 days ago. 1 billion seconds ago was 1987. On the timeline of human history, the ancient Egyptians lived as close to the ancient Romans as the ancient Romans live to us today. A single spaghetti noodle is called a spaghetto. The human anus can stretch up to 7 inches before taking damage. A raccoon can squeeze into holes as tight as 4 inches, meaning you can take almost 2 full raccoons up your butt. Even though you have a VPN, it doesn't necessarily keep you hidden if skilled people want to find you. Many things can leak your IP that you have to isolate and fix, such as IPv6 leaks, DNS leaks, and WebRTC leaks. Also, every add-on you add to your browser gives you a unique fingerprint that can lead back to you. You're not as secure as you think. If you're in the woods and smell cucumbers, there is a copperhead snake nest nearby. There are 3 ways to refer to a gathering of geese. If they're on the ground, it's a gaggle. If they're flying but not in a V formation, it's a skein. If they're flying and in a V-shaped formation, it's a wedge. Armadillos give birth to 4 identical twins, always. They bear either 4 or 8 pups. They either have 1 set of identical quads or 2 sets of identical quads. Peanuts are not nuts. They're legumes and they grow out of the ground like potatoes. Nuts and drupes typically grow in trees or are the seeds of fruits. You can be allergic to tree nuts and not be to peanuts, and vice versa. On YouTube, you can directly click at the end of the video and then play replay. All the ads will be removed. X% of Y is the same as Y% of X. So if you're struggling to find 26% of 50, maybe 50% of 26, which is 13, is much easier to do quickly. The concept of 3 square meals a day is a diet designed for people working physical labor in the early 1900s. Quality of diet and sticking to daily calorie limits is the only part that really matters. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter what time you eat. Although the 3 square meals model is indeed advantageous for day-long maintenance of energy levels. Basically, it's better to just eat when you're hungry than force yourself to eat when you should, so long as you're getting the proper nutrients. Don't buy French bulldogs. They're a fad breed that was sick to begin with, and so many people are being scammed by backyard breeders and puppy farms, they're depressingly broken. If you do buy one, even from an official breeder, be prepared for allergies, ocular bleeding from eye pressure, hip dysplasia, cherry eye, trachea collapse, twisted spine, and dreadful breathing problems. They are expensive. Too many teen girls buy them and can't afford the allergy meds and food and just leave them to suffer. One visited the clinic last week, collapsed and died because of an extra long walk in the sunshines. Don't do it. Let this breed disappear and buy a dog with a nose, please. Most people replace their computers or run them into the ground when they get hot and slow, when in reality, new thermal compound and a solid-state drive upgrade can fix both problems and increase its lifespan for about $30 to $50. It isn't incredibly hard to DIY in most cases. Canadians say sorry so much that an act passed in 2009 states that an apology would not be considered an admission to guilt. Spiders only bite when they feel cornered or harassed in their home. I highly advise against this because it's just dumb, but you could actually handle any spider you see roaming around without getting bit. This goes from the tiny jumping spider to the largest Goliath bird eater. The only exception to this is the Brazilian boner spider. Seasonal allergies are almost entirely man-made ailments. When planting landscaping trees and bushes in the 50s and 60s, people didn't want to use female trees as they didn't want the fruit to fall on streets and on people's cars. So they opted for almost entirely male trees, thus drastically increasing the pollen output. Do not allow yourself to be mentally abused by anyone, especially from your own family. People can overlook how damaging it can be to your well-being. I don't care what they make you think you did to deserve it. You don't. Full stop. Never pour water into any acid because it will splash out acid at 600 kelvins or 300 degrees Celsius. If you have to mix water and acid, always put water first, then acid. This is because the reaction of acid dissolution is exothermic, meaning it will create a big quantity of heat, thus the splashing. But if you put a drop of acid in the water, the reaction won't heat enough to splash. If you don't have a toilet plunger and you've clogged it up, pour in a bit of dish soap and some hot water. The hotter the better. Let stand for 15 minutes and flush. Learned this when, immediately upon arriving at our hotel, my 8-year-old clogged up our toilet and I googled, found this gem, realized I'd packed a tiny travel bottle of dish soap, warmed water up in the microwave, and lo and behold, it worked. I still use it sometimes at home when I don't want to be grossed out by plunging. Yes, my child tends to clog toilets, so there you go. Admit when you're wrong. Say it out loud to the person you are incorrect to, and don't let your pride stop you. The amount of respect you instantly gain is shocking, no matter how much you like the person. You can watch any movie you want at any time by Googling the name of the movie and Google Drive, as well as the name of any book and PDF. Happy quarantine! In your car, if you press the brakes and hear a loud squealing sound, it's time to get the brake pads replaced. After that, If when you press the brakes and you hear a lower growling scraping sound, not only do you need new brake pads, you'll need new brake rotors as well. The cost of this repair is much greater than just replacing your brake pads. If you look at your car tires, you'll see channels that run around the tire. In some of these channels are little thin fins of rubber that cut across them. If that fin of rubber is parallel with the top of the channel, it's time to replace your tires. If every kangaroo that lives in Australia all invade Uruguay at the same time, every person there has to fight around 13 kangaroos. The Stegosaurus dinosaur was older to the Tyrannosaurus rex than the T-Rex is to us. It's a rather well-known fact, but some people tend to think that dinosaurs all lived together in one big chunk of time. In ancient Hawaiian culture, women were not allowed to eat meat. The practical reason for this is because there were not a lot of animals on the islands to feed everyone. Some wild dogs or boar, but it worked its way into the religious system, which was held very strictly. If a woman was caught eating meat, she had to be killed. If it was a young girl, they would just pluck out an eye. One more, when a king dies, the people were expected to show sadness at his death by knocking out some teeth. And if someone didn't knock out some of their own teeth, others would do it for them. Applying superglue to cotton or wool results in a rapid chemical reaction that releases enough heat to cause minor burns. If enough cyanoacrylate is added to the cotton or wool, the fabric will catch on fire, making this a great trick to keep in mind in survival situations. Learning is about the process, not the product. Exercise is about the process, not the product. Growing is about the process, not the product. It's great to have goals of being the smartest dude around, or the most jacked dude, or the richest dude around, but fixating on these far-off goals will not help you. Set aside some time to do some exercise, study, working a skill, going to work or whatever, and give yourself little rewards at the end of each session to encourage your actions. Don't think of it as something you have to do, but something you want to do. And that's true. Do you want to be jacked? Well, then you want to work out. And the more you start viewing it this way, the more it becomes true. Hope you guys like this one. If you have any suggestions on some stories you want to hear, just leave it in the comments. I'll have a new video out tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.